First, let's begin. The Denver Broncos have a new quarterback again. Oh, this has been going on a long time, right? I mean, John Elway, Peyton Manning, Tim Tebow, Brock Osweiler. Trevor Siemian. He was a quarterback, right, for the Denver Broncos. Russell Wilson, remember him too? Bo Nix, the guy that they drafted. That's a good sign that Bo Nix ended up winning the job. The announcement made yesterday by head coach Sean Payton. This was always his guy, a guy that looks like Drew Brees, throws like Drew Brees, is accurate like Drew Brees, and the back of his jersey says Nix. Okay, that's who we went with. And Nix, by the way, had a really good preseason. Let's not take anything away from that. But, he did have a choice of Sean Payton. He brought in Zach Wilson in the offseason. And as I mentioned, Jarrett Stidham is back with Denver again as a possible starter. But inevitably, the future is now. And although Denver is not expected to compete for a championship this season, Payton says it just came down to going with the player he wanted to call the shots.
So, look, Bo Nix is going to be our starting quarterback. I felt like, and I said this to you guys 2 weeks ago, that room has been outstanding. Stidham, certainly with his experience, and then, being able to work with Zach Wilson, all three of those guys. We've got some tough decisions as we get into the roster. I don't want to get into all the other roster battles. That's not for today. He's been outstanding. Obviously, there's a ton of room for growth. There's a lot of things that he needs to work on. I've already spoken with both, all three of those guys. Stiddy, will be a great resource for him, as well as Zach. And, we feel like that off season, at such an important position, we made some really good decisions, and we're going to have a chance to see them unfold as the season goes on.
It's a new day and age of rookie quarterbacks in the NFL. They all start. I mean, that's basically the way it goes. Now, Penix Jr. is not going to start because Kirk Cousins is there. But beyond that, it even feels like J.J. McCarthy would have started for the Vikings as well. Of course, he is out for the season. All right, so if we go through this entire tiebreaker to reach the college football playoff, then we'll probably be here for an hour just doing tiebreakers. But the Southeastern Conference announced their set of tiebreakers for the 2024 football season with the addition of Oklahoma and Texas and the elimination of divisions in this now 16-team league. So basically, I'm going to break it down for you easily. In the event of a tie between teams competing for a spot in the SEC championship game, and folks who could end up having a tie because there's so many teams in this, the procedures basically state as follows, and it shouldn't really get past this too. To win and get into the SEC championship game, head-to-head competition, that is the main tiebreaker. Okay, so now what happens if the two teams don't play each other? I think that's possible too. It becomes the record versus all common opponents versus the tied teams. And that really should break the tie. If it doesn't, they'll do record against the highest placed common opponent in the conference standings and proceeding through the standings among the teams. And there's a lot of other stuff too, but it comes down to a random draw eventually. I don't think it'll ever get to that, but that's the latest with the Southeastern Conference. Meanwhile, the Atlanta Falcons just keep spending money, $65 million guaranteed for cornerback A.J. Terrell. Signs a 4-year extension, $81 million. The Falcons make this announcement official as they just keep giving out the cash this offseason. There's actually a trade, by the way, announced this morning. The Commanders released Riley Patterson. He had a really hard time kicking field goals in the preseason, so they traded for Cade York. And York was pretty good, by the way, with the Browns' 7th-round pick in return. The Cowboys have added a lineman, Linval Joseph. He reunites with Mike Zimmer, former head coach, of course, at Minnesota. They also had Jordan Phillips, Carl Lawson. They're just trying to get better on defense. Also, Tyreek Hill announced yesterday he's probably going to miss this next preseason game for the Dolphins. He hasn't been practicing against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but he should be ready for the regular season, so good news there. Yesterday in college football, an announcement that we have a coach suspension to start the season, the longest tenured coach in all of college football, by the way. Iowa head coach Kirk Ferentz and assistant John Boudmeyer are suspended 1 game for a violation to the recruitment of transfer quarterback Cade McNamara. This happened back in 2022, and Iowa will play on August 31st at home against Illinois State. They'll probably win easily, I would guess, without Kirk Ferentz, but not going to be on the sidelines there for that game. Also, Nebraska has named their starting quarterback, true freshman Dylan Raiola. Not a surprise. He's going to start against UTEP on August 31st. He's the highest-ranked recruit that the Huskers have brought in about 2 decades. So he is there. Former Utah State head coach Blake Anderson intends to sue his ex-employer for wrongful termination, according to a release. Utah State fired Anderson after an internal investigation concluded he violated policies related to properly reporting sexual misconduct. He says he did nothing wrong, and all of this is misinformation. In the offseason in Major League Baseball, it was a feel-good story. Joey Votto, who was not retained by the Cincinnati Reds, signed a 1-year deal with the Toronto Blue Jays. But in his first spring training game, he awkwardly stepped on a bat, and that cost him months, and then various other injuries kept him off the field. He never played with the Blue Jays. What he did last night was say, I'm not going to. Joey Votto retires after 17 seasons in Major League Baseball. He was the 2010 National League MVP and certainly changed the way that we see on-base percentage in the game. One of the more selective hitters in the history of Major League Baseball. Speaking of the Reds, Elly De La Cruz stole his 60th base of the season, and he's got a 20 home run, 60 stolen base season, and he's even looking for more. He's the 5th player in history to do that in Major League Baseball. South Shore Little League coach Bob Laterza criticized Aaron Judge for not paying enough attention to his team in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and the Yankees fired back at this coach, basically saying that Aaron Judge is one of the nicest guys around and takes care of all the kids and is very respectful, and the coach could learn a lot from him. And this is a story about nothing, basically. Who cares? All right, let's move on. Yankees and Guardians today. The Yankees minus 174 on the money line. Garrett Cole, Gavin Williams. It's the matchup potentially that could decide the best record in Major League Baseball at the end of the season. Justin Verlander returned to the Houston Astros. He said he felt pretty good after his first start. Verlander, all they're looking for him is to remain in the rotation and pitch in the postseason. The BMW Championship is currently underway. Siwoo Kim right now has the early lead. He is 4 under par, followed by Taylor Pendrith, 2 under. Will Zalatoris, 1 under. Austin Eckroat at 1 under. And Chris Kirk, who had a great start last week as well, 1 under par as well. Tina Charles becomes the 2nd all-time leading scorer in WNBA history. She plays on the Atlanta Dream. In a low-scoring game last night, she passed Tina Thompson with 7,491 points. A BetMGM player, by the way, won a $6.4 million progressive jackpot on Monday morning. It's the largest jackpot in the history of an online casino in the United States. And by the way, one story to bring to you, former Iowa State tight end has been marred by a betting scandal right now, and his name is Deshaun Hanukkah, teaming up with the sports betting firm to provide education to materials to young athletes. And again, a lot of issues happen with Iowa and Iowa State football, but needless to say, this is going to be, I think, better for the future, especially when you factor in he's working with integrity compliance as well. All right, welcome back to Newswire here on SportsGrid. Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report is going to join us in just a minute, but we've got some breaking news here. And it looks like the Little League coach is still mad at Aaron Judge for not talking to him. I'm just kidding. That's not the news. There's a trade in the National Football League. Washington is trading Jahan Dotson and a 5th-round pick to the Eagles for a 3rd-round pick and 7th-round pick, according to ESPN. So Eagles get a new wide receiver next to A.J. Brown. Washington gets some picks. All right, let's get to the latest. Pat Evans joins us from Legal Sports Report. Pat, great to have you back here on Newswire. Let's get fired up and get started right now. Fired up and started in Canada. We begin today. I know we were going to talk a little bit about this yesterday. The Score, which is a very popular app for many years, is one of the apps on my phone, by the way, that I check scores on. They're launching in Alberta. Let's get to the latest there.
Yeah, so I think we talked about this back in June, right after I got back from the Canadian Gaming Summit, but Alberta is the next market in North America to be opening up a commercial market. I think that's of note because, as we talked about yesterday, the U.S. is devoid of any market opening up right now. I mean, maybe Missouri gets it, it's on the ballot this November. Maybe it gets through and gets passed and we have a new American market next year. But Alberta, we know, is opening up. And we don't know exactly the date. Their regulators have said maybe later this year, maybe very early in 2025. But it's coming. And so, yeah, of course, of note is operators looking to this province and saying, let's go. Again, at the Canadian Gaming Summit, we got lots of news from operators and stakeholders in the industry that said this is going to be a big market. It's not huge population-wise, but they're very avid gamblers. There's lots of casinos there. There's huge amounts of money bet or raffled during Oilers hockey games. I think there was a 50-50 raffle that it got up to like $16 million during one of the playoff games. It's the youngest by demographic, but also the highest in per capita GDP. So, I mean, it's a very ripe market for the taking. And yeah, so during the recent earnings seasons, a lot of operators have said, hey, we're excited about this. We want to be in it. We see Ontario as a successful province, and let's go. Penn Entertainment of note here, because they've got ESPN Bet down here in the US, but up in Canada, they've got The Score, which is a Toronto-based media organization, to your point, very well known for their just basic sports media app that's good for tracking scores. And they're looking, from all points of views that I've talked to, we don't know for sure operator shares, but we know from just kind of anecdotal evidence that they're one of the leading operators in Ontario. So you have to imagine just by the brand awareness in Canada that they're also going to be huge in Ontario or in Alberta. And Jay Snowden, the CEO, said pretty much just that. We've also got several other operators who mentioned how excited they are to kind of build on their Ontario experience in Alberta, including Betway, which recently just pulled out of the U.S. So that's kind of a significant note. North Star Bet, which is another Canadian-based kind of sports media organization, but they also are in the gambling business. Rush Street Interactive, which is Bet Rivers, and they're excited about it. So there's lots of operators who are looking at this as, hey, we need some growth opportunity in new markets, and this is where they're going to get it from. And again, of note, Ontario is a wholly different world than the U.S., even though we're just right next to each other and do share a lot of cultural similarities. It is a very different place. And Alberta is very different from Ontario when you get down to what sports they like and watch and bet on, and operators need to know that. And it's going to be fun to watch to see kind of how it opens up and who takes the lead there. But lots of operators are excited because, again, no new markets in the U.S. to look at, so they're looking at Alberta as the next frontier.
Yeah, nothing new on the 2024 slate, by the way. We could end up in Q4 with no legalization at all of any new states with sports betting. So this is interesting here from Arkansas. I read this article that you guys have over at Legal Sports Report. So a legislature in Arkansas is making the claim that they feel problem gambling, meaning the offshore sports books, are potentially a bigger problem for them than it is for another state. So then I thought about this here, and I'm like, Pat, is this just a little posturing to try to get sports betting legalized? Because it very well may be. I don't know. I mean, I have no data to back it up or not, but, I do have to look at things a little, cynically and say, hey, look, I mean, Arkansas is not the only state where people are there without legal sports betting, like California and Texas, by the way, on the border, that people have to go online and bet illegally if they want to bet.
Yeah, Arkansas is a very strange state. I mean, they opened up in 2022 their online sports betting market, and they set a revenue share of 51%. So 51% of any revenue had to stay in Arkansas. So you had no interest from out-of-state operators like FanDuel and DraftKings. So it's a very interesting market in the sense that the leading sports book is Bet Saracen, a 5-year-old casino brand in Arkansas. I mean, that's kind of, again, a weird market when you look at the U.S. sports betting ecosystem. And again, it's Bet Saracen and the CMO, Carlton Safa, who's leading kind of the charge to get online casino legalized. It's a very, again, interesting market. The way they've set it up is the legislator passed some gaming legislation in 2017, I think it was, that basically said casino gaming is allowed within 4 walls. But it's very easy to change the rules and kind of open it up to say, within the 4 borders of the state. And that's what happened in 2022 to open up online sports betting. Now they're looking at it and saying, hey, we can do that with casino games. And the reason they want to do that is kind of to shut down the offshore sports or offshore casinos, which, we've seen lots of cease and desist to the likes of Bovada from all sorts of regulators. And this is just kind of the way they want to get it done. Talking with that chief marketing officer from Saracen yesterday, he said, we want to get this done because, it's for the consumer protection more than anything, but we also want to make sure we're protecting our own revenues, that we're protecting the consumers, that this gets done. And he said something interesting. He said Michigan regulators are the ones who are kind of the gold standard for the state or for the country. That's great for me up here in Michigan. But he said, we're seeing a lot of cease and desists from these states. Does it do anything? A lot of them no, but Michigan, because there's legalized gaming from authorized operators, it helps push the illegal operators out. So I think that's something to watch, and it could be the next online casino state down there in Arkansas. Does that mean much for the industry and at large? Probably not, because of their revenue sharing situation.
Yeah, very different than a lot of the other states, but that's why we cover it, and that's why you cover it over at Legal Sports Report. Pat, thanks for coming on the show a couple of times this week. We'll catch up with you again next week.
Thanks as always, Craig.